3 days after the battle, Captain Henry Brooks woke up in a hospital in Colorado. His body was covered in bandages. His left arm was in a cast. But he was alive, which was more than he had expected. Dr. Lisa Monroe was the first person he saw. She smiled when his eyes opened. "Welcome back, Captain. You gave us quite a scare." "The swarm?" Brooks asked, his voice rough. "Gone. You did it. Earth is safe." Brooks closed his eyes, feeling relief wash over him. Then another thought struck him. "Zenthar?" Lisa's smile faded. "I'm sorry. The Song of Home was destroyed. Commander Zenthar didn't make it." Brooks felt the loss like a physical pain. Zenthar had saved his life. The Velkari commander had given everything to protect the people who had given his species a home. Over the next week, Brooks recovered slowly. He learned the full cost of the battle. So many ships destroyed, so many good people gone. Captain Patricia Cole, who had sacrificed the Defiant. Sophie Cruz, the young engineer who had turned her battery into a weapon. The crew of the Morning Hope, civilian refugees who had saved Brooks by giving their own lives, and Zenthar, the alien commander who had become his friend. President Maria Santos declared a week of mourning for everyone who fell in the battle. Memorial services were held across Earth and on the Moon. Human and Velkari names were read aloud, honored equally. The species of the dead didn't matter. They had all been defenders. They had all been heroes. On the Moon, workers built a memorial wall. It was a massive structure of polished stone facing the stars. Every name of every person who died was carved into that wall. Human beside Velkari beside council species. In death they were all equal. Iris attended Zenthar's memorial service. She wore a simple dress and carried flowers that Lisa had helped her pick. When it was time, she walked to the front and placed the flowers beneath a hologram of the commander. "Thank you for protecting us," she said softly to the image. "I will plant a garden for you. I promise." The Galactic Council, humbled by what they had witnessed, made an unprecedented offer. They would pay for the construction of a new city on Mars, a place where the Velkari could rebuild their civilization. They would provide resources, technology, whatever was needed. It was an apology for abandoning the refugees, given too late but still genuine. But humanity had different plans. President Santos met with the surviving Velkari leadership in a conference room in Geneva. She sat across from them. No barriers, no formality. "The Council wants to give you Mars," Santos said. "That's generous. But we want to offer you something else. We want to offer you Earth." The Velkari representatives looked confused. One of them, an elder named Torin, spoke. "We don't understand. You want us to take your planet?" "No," Santos said with a smile. "We want you to share it. To live here not as guests or refugees, but as citizens. As people who belong. You fought beside us. You bled with us. That makes you one of us." Torin's eyes filled with tears. "You would do this? After we brought the swarm to your door? You didn't bring the swarm. They followed you because they're monsters. But you're not responsible for monsters. You're just people who needed help. And now we're offering you a home. A real home. For as long as you want it." The Velkari representatives conferred in their own language. Then Torin turned back to Santos. "Many of our people would like to stay on Earth if the offer is sincere. But some want Mars. We want to build New Velkara, a city that honors our past while embracing our future. Can we do both?" "Absolutely," Santos said. "Build your city on Mars, we'll help. But know that Earth's doors are always open. You're family now." Over the next months, the Velkari split between both worlds. Thousands chose to settle on Earth, moving into cities and towns across the planet. They brought their culture, their knowledge, their perspectives. Human children learned Velkari language in schools. Velkari children learned about Earth's history and customs. On Mars, New Velkara rose from the red soil. It was a beautiful city, blending Velkari architectural styles with human engineering. Towering spires made of glass and metal reached toward the sky. Gardens grew under protective domes filled with plants from both worlds. It was a symbol of what could be built when species worked together. Captain Brooks was released from the hospital 6 weeks after the battle. Admiral Peter Grant personally came to escort him out. They walked through the hospital corridors together, past other recovering soldiers and crew members. "How many did we lose, sir?" Brooks asked quietly. "Too many," Grant said. "But we saved billions. Earth survived. The Velkari have a future. That's what they died for. Does that make it worth it?" Grant stopped walking and looked at Brooks. Henry, I've been asking myself that same question. I don't know if there's a good answer. But I know this. If we had turned the Velkari away, if we had let them face the swarm alone, we'd be haunted by that choice forever. We chose to help. Some of us died because of that choice, but I think they would say it was worth it. Outside the hospital, a crowd was waiting. Not media or officials, but regular people, humans and Velkari together, holding signs thanking the defenders. When Brooks appeared, they began to cheer. Iris was at the front of the crowd with Lisa. When she saw Brooks, she ran to him and hugged him carefully. Mindful of his injuries, "You came back," she said, crying with relief. "You kept your promise." Brooks knelt down to her level, ignoring the pain in his body. "Always keep my promises. Have you started your garden yet?" Iris nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, I planted flowers for Commander Zenthar. They're growing already. Do you want to see?" "I'd love to," Brooks said. Iris took him to a community garden in Denver where she now lived with a foster family. It was a small plot, but she had filled it with care. Flowers from Earth mixed with plants grown from Velkari seeds. In the center was a small stone marker with Zenthar's name. "I talk to him sometimes," Iris said. "I tell him about Earth and about my new school and about my friends. Do you think he can hear me?" Brooks felt tears in his eyes. "I think he would be very proud of you." The months turned into a year. Earth and the Velkari grew together, not as separate peoples sharing space, but as one community. Mixed neighborhoods appeared. Velkari restaurants opened beside human cafes. Children of both species played together in parks, not seeing differences, just seeing friends. The Galactic Council formally apologized for their actions during the crisis. They reformed their policies on refugees, creating new laws that protected displaced peoples and required member species to provide aid. Earth became not just a member of the Council, but a moral voice, reminding others that civilization was measured by compassion. Admiral Grant was promoted and put in charge of a new joint fleet, combining human and Velkari crews. Their mission was to patrol known space, protecting refugees and responding to distress calls. They called themselves the Sanctuary Fleet, named after the operation that had saved the Velkari. Dr. Claire Jensen won the Nobel Prize for her work on biological weapons that could fight the swarm. But she used her acceptance speech to talk about something else. "We developed these weapons to protect people who asked for help," she said. "That's what science should be for. Not destruction for its own sake, but protection of those who need it. The Velkari came to us desperate and afraid. We chose to help them. That choice changed everything." Captain Brooks was invited to speak at the dedication of New Velkara. He stood before a crowd of thousands, human and Velkari, looking out at the city they had built together. "A year ago, the Velkari came to Earth asking for shelter," he said. "We gave them a home. Not because we expected anything in return, not because it was easy or safe, but because it was right. Commander Zenthar once asked me why humans would risk so much for strangers. I told him that strangers are just friends we haven't met yet. Looking out at all of you today, I see that's true. We're not humans and Velkari anymore. We're just people who chose to stand together." The crowd cheered. Beside Brooks, Torin, the Velkari elder, smiled. "Your species has taught us something important. You've shown us that home is not just a place. It's the people who welcome you. Thank you for giving us that." On Earth, the memorial wall on the moon became a place of pilgrimage. People from both species would travel there to pay respects to the fallen. They would touch the names carved in stone and remember the sacrifice. Lisa Monroe brought students there regularly as part of history lessons. She would point to the names and tell the stories. The heroes who held the line. The civilians who volunteered. The Velkari who gave everything to protect their new home. "These people died so you could live in peace," she would tell the students. "Never forget that. Never forget the cost of compassion." Brooks visited the wall often. He would stand before Zenthar's name and talk to his friend. He told him about Iris and her garden, about the city on Mars, about how the Velkari and humans had become one people. "You said humanity gave you hope," Brooks would say, "but you gave us something too. You reminded us what we're capable of when we choose to help instead of turning away. Thank you for that." 5 years after the battle, Iris graduated from high school. She had grown into a confident young woman, fluent in both human and Velkari languages, comfortable in both cultures. She had friends from both species. Earth was her home in every way that mattered. Brooks attended her graduation. When she received her diploma, The missiles hit the command node cluster with devastating force. Explosions rippled through the 15 ships that formed the swarm's central intelligence. For a moment, the entire Rasthic fleet seemed to freeze like a body that had lost its mind. Then everything went wrong. The swarm didn't collapse as expected. Instead, it changed tactics. The hundreds of bioships suddenly ignored the military vessels entirely. They turned as one and began a direct run toward Earth itself. The command node had sent one final order before dying. Consume the planet at any cost. They're breaking through, Lieutenant Karen Wells shouted from the Valiant's sensor station. They're heading straight for Earth. Admiral Peter Grant felt ice run through his veins. The strike had worked, but not enough. The swarm was now running on pure instinct, and that instinct was to reach Earth and feed. All ships, intercept course. We have to stop them before they reach the atmosphere. The human fleet threw itself between the swarm and Earth. Ships that were already damaged pushed their engines beyond safe limits. Captains who had held back their last weapons now fired everything. It wasn't about winning anymore. It was about buying time. Captain Henry Brooks watched from the Guardian's bridge as wave after wave of swarm ships headed toward Earth. His ship was barely holding together. Half the crew was injured. Weapon systems were failing, but he kept fighting. Helm, ramming course on that lead bioship, he ordered. His helmsman, a young man named Kyle Chen, looked back in shock. Sir, that will destroy us. I know, Brooks said calmly. But it will destroy them too, and every ship we stop is one that doesn't reach Earth. Do it. Kyle's hands shook as he input the course. The Guardian turned toward the nearest swarm ship, accelerating to maximum speed. Then Commander Zenthar's voice came over the communication channel. Guardian, belay that order. We have another way. The Velkari commander's ship, the Song of Home, appeared beside the Guardian. It was one of the few Velkari vessels that still had weapons and engines at full strength. Zenthar had held his ship in reserve, waiting for the moment it could make the most difference. Captain Brooks, your people gave us a home when no one else would. You've already sacrificed too much. Let us pay our debt. Zenthar, no, Brooks said. You don't have to do this. Yes, we do, Zenthar replied. His voice was calm, peaceful even. Tell my people they are safe. Tell them they have a home now. Tell young Iris to plant flowers for me in her garden. Before Brooks could respond, the Song of Home accelerated away. It used its tractor beam to grab the Guardian and pull it out of the ramming course, then turned toward the swarm's main formation. Brooks watched helplessly as his friend charged toward the enemy. Zenthar, please. Thank you, humanity, Zenthar said. Thank you for giving us hope again. Protect our families. The Song of Home struck the densest cluster of swarm ships at full speed. Its reactor was already set to overload. The explosion tore through the Rasthic formation, destroying dozens of bioships and creating a massive gap in their advance. The swarm's momentum faltered. Ships drifted without coordination, damaged and confused. The sacrifice had bought precious minutes, but it wasn't enough. There were still over 100 bioships heading for Earth, and they were close enough now that people on the planet could see them with telescopes. Close enough that children in shelters could hear their parents' frightened whispers. Brooks felt something break inside him. Zenthar was gone. The Velkari commander who had lost his homeworld, who had led his people across the galaxy seeking safety, who had trusted humanity when everyone else turned away. Gone. All Guardian crew abandoned ship, Brooks said quietly. Get to the escape pods. That's an order. Sir, what are you doing? Kyle asked what Zenthar did.
What needs to be done?
Get to the pods, now. His crew hesitated. They didn't want to leave their captain. But Brooks was their superior officer, and his order was clear. Slowly, reluctantly, they began evacuating. Lieutenant Wells, monitoring from the Valiant, realized what was happening. Admiral Guardian is on a collision course. Brooks is going to ram them. Grant opened a channel to the Guardian. Henry, don't do this. We need you. You need time more, Brooks replied. Sir, it's been an honor. Brooks sat alone on his bridge, watching Earth grow larger on the view screen. Somewhere down there was Iris, waiting for the adults to keep their promises. Somewhere down there were millions of families, human and Velkari, who deserved to see tomorrow. The Guardian accelerated toward the lead swarm ships. Brooks armed the reactor overload sequence. In 60 seconds, his ship would explode with enough force to take out everything around it. 30 seconds. The swarm ships were close enough to touch. Brooks thought about his crew, safely away in escape pods. Good people, all of them. They would make it home 15 seconds. Brooks closed his eyes and thought about why humanity had fought this battle. Not for glory, not for revenge, but because someone asked for help and saying yes was the right thing to do. 10 seconds. Then something grabbed the Guardian. A tractor beam, powerful and precise, pulled the ship sideways. Brooks opened his eyes in confusion. On the view screen he saw another Velkari vessel. Not a warship. A civilian transport from the refugee fleet. Captain Brooks, this is the Morning Hope, a Velkari voice said. You saved our families. Now we save you. Before Brooks could respond, the Morning Hope released the Guardian and accelerated into the swarm. The transport ship, filled with nothing but determination and gratitude, crashed into the bioships and exploded. Brooks felt tears streaming down his face. No more, he whispered. No more sacrifices. But the sacrifices kept coming. Human ships with dying crews made final runs at the swarm. Velkari fighters dove into impossible attacks to buy seconds. Even some of the Galactic Council ships, inspired by the courage around them, made suicide runs rather than retreat. On Earth, Dr. Claire Jensen watched the battle from her laboratory. She had been working on new weapons, but there was no time to deploy them. The swarm was minutes from reaching the atmosphere. She looked at her team. Young scientists who had worked without sleep trying to save humanity. I'm sorry, she said. We didn't solve it fast enough. Kevin Palmer shook his head. We tried. That's what matters. We tried. But as the swarm drew closer to Earth, something unexpected began to happen. Ships that had been destroyed weren't quite dead. Human vessels with dead reactors still had weapons. Captains who had abandoned their ships remotely activated self-destruct sequences, turning their vessels into bombs positioned in the swarm's path. Admiral Grant, watching from the Valiant, saw the pattern forming. They're building a wall, he said in wonder. The destroyed ships are forming a debris field that's slowing the swarm down. It was true. Hundreds of pieces of wreckage, some still burning, some cold and dead, created a barrier that the bioships had to navigate around. Every second they spent avoiding debris was another second they weren't reaching Earth. All remaining ships add to the wall, Grant ordered. Any ship that can't fight anymore, position yourself in the swarm's path and go dead. Make them go around you. Damaged vessels moved into position. They shut down their engines and drifted, becoming obstacles. The swarm had to slow down, had to adjust course, had to waste precious time. But it still wasn't enough. The first swarm ships broke through the debris field. They were battered and damaged, but they were through. Earth's atmosphere was minutes away. On the moon, Sophie Cruz saw them coming. Her railgun battery was destroyed. The barrel melted from overuse. But she had one more weapon. The battery itself was essentially a massive pile of ammunition and explosives. If she triggered it all at once, the explosion would be enormous. This is Battery 7, she transmitted. I'm going critical. Everyone within 5 kilometers, evacuate now. Her assistant grabbed her arm. Sophie, you'll die. Maybe, Sophie said. But I'll take some of them with me. Go, that's an order. The assistant ran. Sophie stayed at her post, watching the swarm ships approach. She waited until they were perfectly positioned, then triggered the overload. Battery 7 exploded like a small sun. The shockwave destroyed 6 swarm ships and damaged a dozen more. But there were still others, still pushing forward. Brooks, back in control of the barely functional Guardian, watched the swarm ships enter Earth's upper atmosphere. They were glowing from re-entry heat. They were damaged and struggling. But they were there. This is Guardian to all ships, Brooks transmitted. We're not done yet. Follow me in. He aimed his ship at the descending swarm vessels and followed them into atmosphere. The Guardian wasn't designed for atmospheric flight, but Brooks didn't care. Other ships, equally damaged, followed him down. On Earth, people looked up and saw the battle entering their skies. They saw human ships chasing alien nightmares through the clouds. They saw explosions lighting up the night. They saw their defenders fighting to the last breath. In a shelter in New York, Iris held her drawings and watched a screen showing the battle. Dr. Lisa Monroe sat beside her, holding the girl's hand. Will Captain Brooks be okay? Iris asked. Lisa didn't know what to say. The Guardian was falling through the atmosphere, burning up from damage and heat. Brooks was still firing weapons at swarm ships, still fighting even as his ship was dying around him. He's doing everything he can, Lisa finally said. He's keeping his promise to you. The battle started with light and thunder. Human railguns fired first, sending projectiles through space at impossible speeds. The kinetic rounds hit swarm bioships with massive force, tearing through organic armor. But the Razthik didn't slow down. They kept coming, absorbing damage that would have destroyed normal ships. Captain Henry Brooks watched from the bridge of the UNS Guardian as the first wave of missiles launched. These weren't regular warheads. These carried Dr. Claire Jensen's biological weapon, the virus designed to attack Razthik cells. Missiles away, his weapons officer reported. Impact in 30 seconds. Brooks held his breath. Everything depended on whether this weapon would work. If it failed, they had no backup plan. The missiles struck the leading swarm ships. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the bioships began to convulse. Their organic hulls rippled and twisted. Some of them slowed down, clearly struggling with internal systems failing. "It's working," Brooks said. "All ships target the infected vessels. Hit them while they're weak." The human fleet concentrated fire on the weakened swarm ships. Plasma bolts from Velkari vessels combined with human railgun fire. Lasers from the moon bases cut through the struggling bioships. Within minutes, a dozen swarm vessels were destroyed. But the celebration was brief. "Sir, the swarm is adapting," Lieutenant Karen Wells reported from the Valiant. "The bioweapon's effectiveness is already decreasing. Estimate 20 minutes before it stops working completely." Admiral Peter Grant cursed under his breath. 20 minutes. Claire's team had predicted 30. The swarm was learning faster than expected. "All ships, this is Grant. We have 20 minutes of advantage. Make it count. Target priority is any ship that shows infection symptoms. Fire everything." The fleet threw everything they had at the swarm. The space between Earth and the moon became a storm of weapons fire. Human destroyers danced through the chaos, using their superior speed to strike and move. Velkari cruisers added their plasma weapons, creating walls of superheated energy. The Council ships hammered the swarm's flanks, trying to split their attention. But the Razthik were learning. They began to dodge more effectively. They spread out their formation to reduce damage from area weapons, and they kept pushing forward, always toward Earth. Commander Zenthar, commanding a squadron of Velkari fighters, led his ships in a desperate attack run. They dove into the swarm formation, targeting the connection points between bioships. If they could separate the vessels, it might disrupt the hive mind's coordination. "All wings, follow me in," Zenthar ordered. "Aim for the organic bridges between ships." The Velkari fighters were small and fast. They weaved between the massive bioships, firing their weapons at critical points. Several connections were severed, causing those swarm ships to drift apart from the formation. But the cost was high. The swarm's defensive fire was intense. Zenthar watched as 2 of his fighters were hit and destroyed. Good pilots, friends he had known for years, gone in flashes of light. "Pull back," he ordered. "Reform at Rally Point Delta." On the moon, the defensive batteries opened fire. Massive railguns that normally would take minutes to cool between shots were firing continuously. Damn the heat buildup. Engineers pushed the weapons beyond their design limits because there was no choice. A young engineer named Sophie Cruz worked frantically to keep her battery operational. The barrel was glowing red from heat. Warning lights flashed everywhere, but she couldn't stop firing. Every shot meant one less threat to Earth. "Battery 7 is overheating," her assistant warned. "I know," Sophie said, adjusting coolant flow. "Just keep it firing for another 10 minutes. We can replace the barrel later. Right now we need every gun working." The Guardian took its first major hit. A swarm bioprojectile, something like an acid ball wrapped in organic matter, struck the ship's port side. The acid began eating through the hull, spreading like a living thing. "Seal sections 9 through 12, Brooks ordered. "Vent atmosphere to space. It's the only way to stop the spread." The crew in those sections had 30 seconds to get out. Most made it, 3 didn't. Brooks forced himself not to think about their names right now. He would remember them later. Right now he had to keep fighting. "Damage report," he said. "Port weapons offline," his tactical officer replied. "Shield generators at 60%. "But we're still flying, sir." "Then we're still fighting." "Helm, bring us around. Target that cluster of swarm ships at coordinates 278. The Guardian turned and fired. Its remaining weapons cut into a group of swarm vessels that were trying to break through the defensive line. Dr. Claire Jensen watched the battle from her laboratory ship, monitoring the effectiveness of her bioweapon. The data was clear. In 15 minutes, the virus would be completely useless. The swarm had adapted. "We need a second weapon," she told her team. Something they haven't seen. Ideas, Kevin Palmer looked exhausted. What about temperature extremes? Can we flash freeze them? Or superheat them faster than they can adapt? Maybe, Claire said. But we'd need to modify every missile in the fleet. There's no time. Another scientist spoke up. What about sound? Specific frequencies that disrupt their organic systems? Claire thought about it. Sound didn't travel in space, but they could create vibrations through direct contact. If they could ram swarm ships while broadcasting the right frequency, it might work. Get me Admiral Grant, she said. 15 minutes into the battle, the bioweapon stopped working. The swarm ships were now fully adapted. They pushed forward with renewed strength, heading straight for Earth. Grant watched the tactical display. The swarm wasn't trying to destroy the human fleet. They were just trying to get past it. They wanted Earth itself. They're going for the planet, he said. All ships fall back to secondary defensive line. We form a wall between them and Earth. Nothing gets through. The fleet regrouped, forming a tighter formation closer to Earth. It was a desperate move. If the swarm broke through here, there was nothing else to stop them. The Galactic Council ships took position on the flanks. Their captain contacted Grant. We will hold this line with you, Admiral. We won't run again. Good to have you with us, Grant replied. The swarm hit the defensive line like a hammer. Bioships slammed into human vessels, trying to break through by sheer force. Some used organic boarding pods, trying to infect human ships with rasthic organisms. The UNS Defiant, a heavy cruiser, found itself covered in boarding pods. Rasthic creatures began eating through the hull, trying to reach the crew inside. The ship's captain, a woman named Patricia Cole, made a hard choice. All hands, abandon ship. Get to the escape pods. I'm setting the reactor to overload. Her crew evacuated while Captain Cole stayed at her post. When the last escape pod launched, she triggered the overload. The Defiant exploded, taking a dozen swarm ships with it. Brooks saw it happen. He saw the sacrifice. He knew others would have to do the same before this was over. All ships, this is Guardian. Captain Cole just showed us what we're fighting for. Honor her sacrifice. Hold the line. Lieutenant Wells on the Valiant was coordinating fleet movements when she noticed something on the sensors, a pattern in how the swarm ships moved. They weren't completely random. There was a rhythm to their attacks, like they were following orders from a central source. Sir, I think I found the command node, she told Grant. It's here, in the center of their formation. This cluster of 15 ships moving together. Grant looked at the display. Wells was right. Those ships stayed in tight formation while others spread out. That had to be where the hive mind's core intelligence was located. If we take out that node, we disrupt their coordination, Grant said. But getting to it means going through 200 swarm ships. It's suicide, his tactical officer said. Maybe, Grant agreed. But if we can disrupt them even for a few minutes, it might give us the advantage we need. He opened a channel to the fleet. This is Admiral Grant. We've identified the swarm's command center. I need volunteers for a strike mission. It's going to be dangerous. Very dangerous. But if we succeed, we might win this battle. Responses flooded in. Nearly every captain volunteered. Grant had to choose. He needed ships that were fast enough to penetrate the swarm formation, but strong enough to deliver a killing blow. Guardian, Valiant, and Council ships Swift Justice and Morning Light, you're with me. Everyone else, keep the main swarm occupied. Make them think we're just trying to hold the line. Brooks received the order and nodded. Helm, plot an intercept course. Engineering, give me everything the engines have. Weapons, arm all remaining missiles. This is going to be a one-way trip unless we're very lucky. His crew worked without question. They understood what Brooks was asking. They might not come back from this. But they would do it anyway. Commander Zenthar heard about the strike mission. He contacted Brooks directly. Captain, let my fighters escort you in. We can clear a path. Zenthar, your people have already sacrificed enough, Brooks said. Which is why we know what's at stake, Zenthar replied. My fighters are fast. We can hit the swarm ships around the command node, create confusion. It will give you a better chance. Brooks wanted to refuse. He didn't want more Velkari deaths on his conscience. But he needed every advantage. All right. But stay behind us until we breach their line. Then hit them fast and get out. Understood. Admiral Peter Grant stood in the command center of the UNS Valiant, staring at the holographic display. 300 enemy ships glowed red on the screen. Each one was a bioship, grown rather than built, covered in armor made from consumed metals and organic matter. The Rasthic swarm moved as one mind, and that mind wanted only to consume and grow. Grant had fought in many battles during his 30 years of service. He had never faced anything like this. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council," Lieutenant Karen Wells said from her station. Grant already knew what they wanted. "Put it through." The council representative appeared on screen. He was a Sophian with 3 eyes and skin like polished stone. "Admiral Grant, the council demands that you surrender the Velkari refugees immediately. If you do this, the swarm may leave your system. This is your only chance to save Earth." Grant's jaw tightened. "Tell the council that Earth doesn't trade lives." The Velkari asked for help. We said yes. If the council wants to help us, they can send ships. Otherwise, stay out of our way. The Sophian's eyes widened. "You would risk your entire planet for refugees?" "We would," Grant said firmly. "And we're disappointed that you wouldn't. Valiant out." He cut the transmission. Around the command center, his crew worked quietly, but he could see the pride in their eyes. No one questioned the decision. No one suggested abandoning the Velkari. The council didn't send ships. Across the solar system, humanity prepared for war. The moon became a weapons platform covered with railguns and missile batteries. Mars colony sent its mining lasers. Powerful tools now repurposed as defensive weapons. Every space station became a fortress. Every asteroid in the belt was marked as potential ammunition. On Earth, President Maria Santos spoke to the world. "We know what's coming. We know the danger. But we also know that the Velkari families in orbit above us came here desperate and afraid. They asked for shelter. We gave them a home. Now we defend that home with everything we have." Cities didn't panic. Instead, people volunteered. Factories that made cars started making ammunition. Engineers who designed buildings now designed weapons. Even children collected scrap metal that could be melted down and used. Dr. Claire Jensen led a team of scientists studying the swarm. She worked in a laboratory ship near the moon. Surrounded by data from Velkari records, the information was disturbing. The Rasthic had destroyed 4 civilizations in 10 years. Each time they grew stronger by consuming technology and biological matter. They learned from every battle. Energy weapons barely hurt them because their ships could adapt and absorb the energy. Kinetic weapons worked better but still weren't enough. "We need something new," Claire told her team. "Something they haven't evolved to fight against." A young scientist named Kevin Palmer raised his hand. "What about biological warfare?" "They're organic. What if we could make them sick?" Claire thought about it. The idea was risky. Creating a weapon that could attack living tissue might hurt the Velkari too. But if they could target specific Rasthic biology, make the weapon precise enough, it might work. "Get me every sample of Rasthic organic matter we have," she ordered. "We've got 3 days to create a virus that can kill them before they adapt." "Let's get to work." The team worked without sleep. They tested and failed and tested again. Claire drank coffee until her hands shook. Kevin fell asleep at his desk twice. But slowly they made progress. They found a weakness in how Rasthic cells replicated. They engineered a virus that could exploit that weakness. Meanwhile, Captain Henry Brooks worked with the Velkari crews. Many of their ships were barely functional. Human engineers helped them repair damaged systems and showed them how to integrate Velkari plasma weapons with human targeting computers. Brooks spent hours with Commander Zenthar, learning about Velkari tactics and their experience fighting the swarm. "We tried to fight them at our homeworld," Zenthar said sadly. "We had a strong fleet. We had planetary shields. It wasn't enough. They just kept coming, wave after wave. Our weapons couldn't kill them fast enough." "What worked best?" Brooks asked. "Ramming them," Zenthar said. "Physical impact. But that means sacrificing your ship and crew. We lost so many good people that way." Brooks made notes. "What about their formation? Do they have a command structure?" "Yes. They have a central node, a ship that coordinates all the others. Kill that and the swarm becomes confused. But it's always protected, hidden in the center of their formation. Getting to it means going through hundreds of other ships." Brooks studied the tactical data. There had to be a way. The swarm was powerful, but it wasn't invincible. Nothing was invincible. One evening, Brooks walked through the refugee quarters on the Morning Star. He wanted to remember what they were fighting for. He found Iris, the young Velkari girl, drawing more pictures. This time she was drawing the human ships protecting the refugee fleet. "Hello, Iris," Brooks said, sitting beside her. She looked up and smiled. Hello, Captain Brooks. Look, I drew your ship. The drawing showed the UNS Guardian, Brooks' destroyer, with stars all around it. The ship had a shield protecting smaller ships behind it. That's very good, Brooks said. Is that what you think we'll do? The nice lady said you'll keep us safe, Iris said. She said humans are good at keeping promises. Brooks felt a weight settle on his shoulders. We are, he said. And I promise you, Iris, you're going to have that garden you drew. You're going to have a home here. Even if the bad things come, especially if the bad things come. As the swarm drew closer, something unexpected happened. More human ships arrived, but these weren't military vessels. They were civilian cargo ships that had been quickly modified with weapons, mining vessels with drilling lasers, even a few tourist cruise ships that now carried missile pods. Admiral Grant watched them arrive and felt humbled. These were volunteers, civilians who heard about the coming battle and decided they wanted to help. Many would die. They knew this. They came anyway. On the second day of preparation, President Santos made another announcement. We have been asked why Earth risks so much for strangers. Some say we're being foolish. Some say we should save ourselves and let the Velkari face their fate alone. I say we remember our own history. We remember when people fled across oceans seeking safety. We remember when borders closed against the desperate. We remember the cost of turning away those in need. Today we choose differently. Today we stand for something better. The speech reached beyond Earth. It was broadcast across the galaxy. Thousands of species heard it. Most did nothing, but some felt ashamed. On the third day, new ships arrived. Not human ships. These were from the Galactic Council's observation fleet. 40 ships dropped out of hyperspace and moved into position. The lead ship's captain contacted Admiral Grant. We have been watching. We were wrong. We were wrong to abandon the Velkari. We were wrong to doubt humanity. We want to help, Grant smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. Welcome to the fight. Here's the battle plan. The combined fleet now numbered 97 ships. It still wasn't enough to match the swarm's 300, but it was better than facing them alone. Dr. Claire Jensen's team finished their biological weapon. It was loaded into special warheads that would spread the virus through the swarm. Tests showed it would weaken Razthik bioships for approximately 30 minutes before they adapted. 30 minutes wasn't much, but it might be enough. Captain Brooks called a meeting of all ship captains, human and Velkari. They gathered via hologram in the Valiant's conference room. Here's the situation, Brooks said. We're outnumbered 3-1. The enemy is more powerful than anything we've faced. They don't negotiate, don't surrender, and don't stop. But we have advantages. We fight for our homes. We fight for families. We fight for the idea that people who ask for help should get it. That means something. He pulled up a tactical display. The swarm will likely try to break through our line and reach Earth directly. We can't let that happen. Every ship they get past is a threat to billions of people below. We hold the line at all costs. Commander Zenthar spoke up. And the central node? The command ship? If we get a chance, we take it, Brooks said. But our first priority is protecting Earth. Everything else comes second. The meeting ended. Captains returned to their ships. Crews prepared for battle. Engineers did final checks on weapons. Doctors prepared medical bays for casualties. Everyone knew what was coming. On Earth, children were sent to deep underground shelters. Cities went dark to avoid giving the swarm targets. Weapons batteries were charged and ready. Millions of people looked up at the sky and prayed for the defenders above. In the refugee quarters, Lisa Monroe sat with Velkari families. She told them stories about Earth, about oceans and mountains and forests. She promised them that after the battle, they would see these wonders for themselves. The swarm was now 12 hours away. Admiral Grant walked through the Valiant one last time. He stopped to talk with his crew, thanking them for their service. He visited the medical bay and promised the doctors they would have the supplies they needed. He stood on the bridge and looked at Earth through the view screen. Beautiful planet, Lieutenant Wells said beside him. Worth fighting for, Grant agreed. At 0600 hours, the swarm entered weapons range. Sensors showed them clearly now. The ships appeared at the edge of the solar system without warning. 42 vessels, all badly damaged, their hulls scorched and torn. Inside those ships were 300,000 Velkari refugees, the last survivors of a once great civilization. They had been running for 3 months and they were out of options. Commander Zenthar stood on the bridge of the Morning Star, the largest of the refugee ships. His scales, once bright blue, had faded to a dull gray from stress and exhaustion. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Everyone was tired. Everyone had lost someone they loved. Through the view screen, Zenthar could see Earth. It was a beautiful blue and green planet, so different from his own burned world. He had never been to Earth before. Most Velkari hadn't. Humans were newcomers to the galactic community, barely 30 years since first contact. Other species often ignored them or dismissed them as unimportant, but Earth was the only place left to go. The Razthik swarm had destroyed everything else. Zenthar closed his eyes and tried not to remember the day his homeworld died. The swarm had come from deep space, a collection of organic ships controlled by one terrible hive mind. They didn't negotiate. They didn't take prisoners. They simply consumed everything, turning planets into feeding grounds for their endless hunger. The Velkari had asked the Galactic Council for help. The Council had debated for weeks while worlds burned. Then they closed their borders and told the Velkari to find somewhere else to go. The Tyrrhenian Empire had done the same. Even old allies had turned them away, too afraid the swarm would follow. Now the Velkari had nowhere left to run. Zenthar turned to his communications officer. "Send the distress signal to Earth. Tell them we need sanctuary. Tell them we have children and families who just need somewhere safe." The officer nodded and transmitted the message. Then they waited. Hours passed. The refugee fleet drifted in the cold darkness of space. Some of the ships were losing power. Medical supplies were almost gone. Children were crying from hunger in the lower decks. Zenthar wondered if he had led his people to another dead end. Then the response came. A human voice, calm and steady, spoke through the communication system. "This is Captain Henry Brooks of Earth Defense. We have received your request for sanctuary. You are cleared for approach. We are sending you coordinates now. We will protect you." Zenthar felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. The Velkari fleet followed the coordinates to a stable orbit near Earth's moon. Zenthar expected to wait for permission to land, to fill out forms to prove they weren't dangerous. That's how it had worked everywhere else. Instead, within hours, human ships began arriving. But they weren't warships. They were cargo vessels filled with food and medicine, transport ships with repair equipment, hospital ships with medical teams ready to help. The first human to board the Morning Star was a doctor named Lisa Monroe. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. She came with a team of medics carrying supplies and equipment. "Where are your sick and injured?" she asked Zenthar in perfect Velkari. She had learned his language just for this mission. Zenthar led her to the medical bay. It was overwhelmed with patients. Velkari children with radiation sickness from damaged ships, adults with untreated wounds from swarm attacks, elderly refugees dying from stress and exhaustion. Lisa looked around for just a moment, then rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She worked for 16 hours without stopping. Her team spread throughout the ship, treating everyone they could reach. They shared their food with hungry children. They held the hands of the dying and told them they were safe now. Zenthar watched in amazement. These humans didn't know the Velkari. They had no reason to care. Yet here they were, giving everything they had. When Lisa finally took a break, Zenthar found her sitting in a corridor, drinking water and looking exhausted. "Why are you doing this?" he asked her. "Your people barely know us. Why risk so much to help strangers?" Lisa looked up at him with those kind eyes. "You needed help," she said simply. "That's enough reason." As the humans worked to save Velkari lives, their military moved into position around the refugee fleet. Admiral Peter Grant arrived with the 3rd Fleet. 27 warships formed a protective circle around the vulnerable Velkari vessels. The humans called it Operation Sanctuary. Zenthar watched the warships take up their positions. Each one was powerful, equipped with weapons he could barely understand. They pointed outward, creating a shield between the refugees and the dark space beyond. Captain Brooks came aboard the Morning Star to coordinate the relief efforts. He was a tall man with blue eyes and a friendly smile. He walked through the refugee areas, talking to families, learning names, promising them safety. Zenthar found himself walking beside Brooks through the ship. They passed families being fed, children receiving medical care, elderly Velkari finally able to rest in peace. "I don't understand humans," Zenthar admitted. "The Council abandoned us. Our allies turned us away. But you, a species we barely know, you welcome us like family. Brooks stopped walking and looked at the Velkari commander. Maybe that's the difference. Maybe we see family where others see strangers. You came here afraid and hurt, with children who need protecting. What else do we need to know? The swarm is following us, Zenthar said quietly. They track refugees. They will come here. You know this, yes? We know, Brooks said calmly. Our sensors picked up their trail 3 hours ago. They'll be here in about a week. Then you should send us away, Zenthar said, feeling his heart break. We cannot ask you to fight our battle. Brooks put a hand on Zenthar's shoulder. It was a human gesture meant to comfort. You're not asking. We're choosing. You came to Earth looking for shelter. We're giving you a home, and we protect our home. 3 days after the Velkari arrived, the long-range sensors confirmed what everyone feared. The Resthic swarm had changed course. They were coming straight toward Earth, following the refugee trail like predators following blood and water. Admiral Grant called a meeting with his officers and the Velkari leadership. They gathered in a conference room on the command station orbiting Earth. The swarm will arrive in 4 days, Grant said. Our intelligence shows approximately 300 bioships. They've destroyed 4 civilizations. They've never been stopped. Then this is suicide, one of the Velkari officers said. You cannot win. Maybe not, Grant admitted. But we're going to try anyway. Because that's what you do when someone asks for help. You try. He turned to his officers. Recall every available ship to the Sol system. I want every defensive platform operational. Get our scientists working on weapons that can hurt these things. We have 4 days to prepare for the fight of our lives. The room was quiet. Then Captain Brooks spoke up. Sir, permission to work directly with the Velkari crews. If we're fighting together, we should prepare together. Grant nodded. Granted. Commander Zenthar, will your people fight with us? Zenthar looked around at his officers. They were tired. They were scared. But they were also grateful. These humans had given them hope when they had none left. We will fight, Zenthar said. We brought this threat to your door. We will help you face it. Over the next 4 days, the solar system transformed into a fortress. Engineers worked day and night to repair Velkari ships and integrate their weapons with human systems. Scientists studied everything the Velkari knew about the swarm, looking for weaknesses. Soldiers trained together, human and Velkari, learning to work as one force. Captain Brooks spent hours with Velkari families, making sure they knew where the shelters were, promising them that no matter what happened, they would be protected. He met a young Velkari girl named Iris who was drawing pictures with crayons a human aid worker had given her. What are you drawing? Brooks asked gently. Iris showed him a picture of a house with a garden. My new home. The nice lady said Earth has places like this. Brooks knelt beside her. We're going to make sure you get that home. I promise. On the 4th day, alarms began sounding across the fleet. The swarm had arrived early. They emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, 300 organic ships that looked like nightmares come to life. Admiral Grant's voice came over every communication channel in the system. All ships, battle stations. This is what we prepared for. The Velkari came to us asking for shelter. We gave them a home. Now we defend it. The battle for Earth was about to begin.